The IRS targeting of conservative groups has nothing to do with the September 11th terrorist attacks in the U.S. consulate in Benghazi. But these two political tornadoes collided simultaneously into the White House Friday and continue to swirl around Washington. Both stories are like catnip for conspiracy theorists. In the Internal Revenue Service, conservative groups and lawmakers have for years complained they were getting harassed by the IRS. Maybe they weren't imagining things. In Benghazi, conservatives have long alleged that the White House tried in the immediate aftermath to downplay that terrorism led to the consulate attack. Their suspicion is that the White House didn't want to admit a terrorist attack occurred right before the presidential election. But talking points on Benghazi, it turns out, underwent heavy revisions. ABC News' Jonathan Karl unearthed those edits last week. But while in both cases some long-held suspicions were confirmed, and the two have combined to dominate the political airwaves in the past several days, there are some key distinctions between the two. First, disdain at the IRS has been swift and bipartisan. The tax collecting agency, it turns out, was targeting conservative political groups, as it assessed tax-exempt status for new organizations. The IRS scandal burst forth out of nowhere Friday and seems poised to dominate the political conversation. Lawmakers from both parties have called in the acting IRS commissioner to resign. Indignant hearings are expected in Capitol Hill later this week. The Benghazi story, on the other hand, has become ultra-partisan, as it has percolated for months. Republicans on Capitol Hill have argued that the Obama administration intentionally played down the possibility that the attack in the consulate was a planned terrorist attack. Read more. Benghazi talking point edited 12 times, scrubbed of terror references sure. President Obama referred to it as terror the day after Chris Stevens, the U.S. ambassador to Libya, and 3 others died in Benghazi. But Obama's ambassador to the United Nations said shortly thereafter that it might have been spontaneous reaction to a video. In hindsight, she was wrong. The question is, whether the Obama administration was intentionally misleading or just misguided. The revelation Friday that the State Department was heavily involved in extensive editing of talking points that were given to Susan Rice set administration critics on fire. That sort of political meddling is what the IRS story lacks so far. Obama strongly condemned political targeting by IRS staffers in Cincinnati. He said today that he didn't learn about the story until Friday. He said he would wait for an internal IRS investigation to take action. But I've got no patience with it, he said. I will not tolerate it. And we'll make sure that we find out exactly what happened in this. And he added that integrity is key for the IRS. People have to have confidence that they are applying it in a nonpartisan way, applying the laws in a nonpartisan way, he said. I don't care whether you're a Democrat, Independent or Republican. At some point there are going to be Republican administrations. At some point there are going to be Democratic ones. Either way, you don't want the IRS ever being perceived to be biased and anything less than neutral in terms of how they operate. Compare that to his dismissive tone regarding the Benghazi controversy, which he called a sideshow. There's no there, he said, of controversy about the Benghazi talking points. Related, lawmakers want IRS accountability. Republican Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky said Friday it doesn't really matter whether President Obama knew specifically what the IRS was doing when it targeted conservative groups. Obama, McConnell said, deserves some blame regardless. They all take their cues from the tone expressed by the president, and he's made it clear that this administration is perfectly willing to crack down on critics, McConnell told the National Review. Ellipsis points this is a lot bigger than just one person, he added. This a whole effort by the administration, across the board, to squelch their opponents, to shut them up, and, finally, they've done it in a way that will allow us to call attention to it nationwide. This is an important distinction. You wouldn't know it from the way people talk about the